You're the future leaders of the country. Let's start acting like it.
A clear message directed at what Andy Cooke describes as a minority group. Young people, not just students, choosing to ignore what the rest of us are having to obey.
Use your common sense. Follow the guidelines. You've got a full life ahead of you. Just for the sake of the next few weeks or couple of months, work with each other to keep the more vulnerable people across Merseyside and the rest of the UK safe.
Latest government estimates put Liverpool's student population at around 70,000 people strong, the majority of these living in and around the city centre. For many, it's the first taste of freedom they've had in a 6-month lockdown, only to be plunged back into isolation once again.
But with Halguin approaching, Mr Cooke says he doesn't want a repeat of the scenes we saw a fortnight ago that shame the city, and that fines will be issued if people break the rules.
Their behaviour was irresponsible, puts the city in a bad light. It was childish. People know what the dangers are, and for the sake of 30 seconds of fame, was it worth it? If people engage with us and do the right thing, we will usually just give a warning. But now that we're in the highest tier, those warnings are less and less, because people should know the rules by now. If you are thinking of hosting a party, if you are going to a social gathering which you know is illegal, you can expect a fine.
It's been a tough 6 months for the Chief Constable and his officers. Crime figures might be down, but there's been little respite for enforcing often confusing government policy with stretched resources.
Not only are we dealing with the crime issues, the missing from home issues, the mental health issues that we deal with on a daily basis, we're also having to deal with the additionality of licensing visits, checking open spaces, being called to numerous calls of people who are allegedly breaching the legislation. That's all on top, and I don't get more police officers to do that. So that means the police officers that you do see and the police staff are working longer hours, they're having less days off, and that puts a strain on my staff as well. At the end of the day, the officers will interpret the legislation that comes through fairly, competently, and like in any part of life, there's always going to be 1 or 2 mistakes made. Just understand, they're human error. This isn't police officers wanting to do the wrong thing. It's a mistake, and we all make mistakes. But for the vast majority of the way my staff have dealt with this, I'm really, really proud of them.
And even Mr Cooke hasn't escaped the virus himself.
Right at the start of this pandemic, I was unfortunate enough to get coronavirus. Certainly it had me worried. It had me confined to one room for 2 weeks. Those who say this doesn't exist or that it's all a myth, you need to think again, because I've seen plenty of people in the intensive care unit, plenty of grieving families throughout this pandemic. So the most vulnerable across our society are suffering and dying as part of this. We need to work together to ensure that doesn't happen.
Where's Powell, Liverpool Life?